Community connections, CKMS. Local sounds, thoughts, passions, and success. Celebrate local, your neighbor's got a story to tell. Community connections, CKMS.
Happy Friday, Waterloo Region. You're listening to CKMS Community Connections for Friday, the 30th of January, 2026. In the studio with me is Markham from Waterloo Region Climate Initiatives, who's going to be talking to us about animal agriculture. Hi, Mo.
Hi. Thanks for having me, Bob.
You're welcome. Going to listen to some music from Red Orchestra. This is Always Come About. New music from KW Content.
Outside of the lines and under the covers, yeah. And I know sometimes this world can bring you down, but I know you will always come around. Covered in the dust, the mire and the rust of history, I know that I am all that I can be. I'm a man of the 20th century. And you know sometimes this world can bring me down, but you know I will always come around. 'Cause if the heavens should fall, you and I will stand tall, born ready. We can show them all how to live again. It isn't enough to say the world is not this way, we're rock steady. We can show them all the way back again. Holding our hearts, holding our souls in broken hands. When the world falls apart, when there's no control, will be the foundation on which to build again. 'Cause we know sometimes this world can bring us down. We know we will always come around. 'Cause if the heavens should fall, you and I will stand tall, born ready. We can show them all how to live again. It isn't enough to say the world is not this way, we're rock steady. We can show them all the way back again. If the heavens should fall, you and I will stand tall, born ready. We can show them all how to live again. It isn't enough to say the world is not this way, we're rock steady. We can show them all the way back again.
That's Red Orchestra, talking to Markham about local talent in Waterloo Region. There's so much of it. Don't know anything about Red Orchestra. Have to get them into the studio at some point to find out more about them. Markham, welcome.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having us again, Bob.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Appreciate it. So I just wanted to start with acknowledging that the Indigenous peoples were much better stewards of the land than settlers have been. And settlers, in addition to the destruction and intolerance and violence and division and disease that we've brought, we also brought a lot of non-native species of animals, and also even insects like honeybees. And we have killed off massive numbers of native animals and birds. And I really hope that going forward that we can live in a more harmonious way with each other and with our shared planet. So.
Yeah. I didn't realize that honeybees weren't native.
I know, most people don't. And you know, they're often promoted, and we do need them for some things, but they're also they're driving out a lot of native bees, unfortunately.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
So our group, Waterloo Region Climate Initiatives, began in 2017 to raise awareness that a plant-based diet is the most impactful way for individuals to fight climate and environmental breakdown, and also to fight food insecurity and chronic health issues. So we've worked, we ran the local veg fests for 7 years here in the region.
Yeah.
We have worked with various levels of government. We've screened films, done speaks. We have done lots of booths and things at different events and festivals that weren't ours. And we often give out samples of plant-based cheeses and meats and milks and such. We've also done op-eds, etc. So a lot of the information that I'll be presenting today is from the Oxford Food Study, which is the most comprehensive study of our food system that has ever been done. Also, all the information will be from peer-reviewed studies and from the United Nations, from Oxford, et cetera. The first slide that we have, well, that's our logo, and there's contact information on there. And then the next one is of Joseph Poor from the Oxford Food Study. And he says that a vegan diet is probably the single largest way to reduce our impact on the planet. And people often think, oh, you know, they're just, you know, it's just vegans doing these studies. And actually, Joseph Poor was not a vegan when he started doing this research. So it was a 5-year study of nearly 40,000 farms across the world. And he saw really early on where things were going, and that changed things for him. So they did that study with a number of other institutions in the United Kingdom and across the world as well. So I guess what really got me doing this work was seeing what I used to live in British Columbia, and I had gone out to visit after I had not been out for 7 years. And I could actually see the climate breakdown with my own eyes, and that's really what got me started doing so many different things, so much activism around politics and around climate, et cetera. And I also started learning more about our food system and became vegan myself. But when I was out there, everything was yellow. It wasn't even brown, it was yellow. It was so dry. They weren't allowed to use water for most things. You could only water vegetable gardens. You weren't allowed to water your grass or anything like that. You weren't allowed to wash your car. And it was, there was so much destruction that I could see. When I went out to the women's camp, which was what I was there to attend on Vancouver Island, they told us that we might have to be evacuated. There were fires about 30 kilometers away. Oh. And on some days we had to stay inside because of the smoke. We watched them come with these massive buckets and take water from the lake in front of us and to bring it to the fire. I try not to fly anymore, but when I was flying home, we were watching more fires roll in from Washington State. And then when we landed in Calgary to switch planes, you couldn't see the mountains for the smoke. So for me, I tell people I saw climate change because I think it was, it was a powerful reminder or a wake-up call, really, for me of what's going on. So. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to pay attention to what Joseph Poore says, that, to remind ourselves that as individuals, the most important thing that we can do is to move towards a plant-based diet. So it's also, in terms of health, it's a powerful tool for health. Helps with a lot of cancers, type 2 diabetes, weight issues, gut health, and all kinds of things. And if we think about it, as our climate breaks down, our health is going to worsen as well. That's a given. I came home from that trip out west using inhalers that I hadn't used in years at that point. And I think, the last couple of summers, we've spent weeks inhaling smoke from fires. So, I think we need to pay attention to what that's doing to us physically. And, particularly the most vulnerable people among us, children, seniors like me.
I'm getting there, yeah.
And, and people with physical disabilities, obviously breathing issues, lung issues, et cetera. So, and another piece of the puzzle is that I think of this whole thing as this big web that, animal agriculture has just all of these different issues, and they all kind of interconnect. The next slide is about food and the amount of food that farmed animals consume. It is kind of wild, actually. If people are looking at it eventually on the website, they'll see that for the ratio of food that's consumed to food that's produced is pretty huge. For cows, they're the worst of it. They're the worst on all beef is the worst on all counts, pretty much. So it's a ratio of 30 kilos of food for 1 kilo of food produced. And even what people think of as sustainable meat, like chicken and eggs, that's at least 4 times the amount of food that is needed to produce 1 kilo so 4 kilos to produce 1 kilo of food.
Food that could be better used for feeding humans.
Absolutely. And we need to really think about that. And, the reality is that eating animal products doesn't produce food; it consumes food, right? So when animals are being used to produce food, they're not a net producer of food; they're a net consumer of food.
Right.
And so the next slide just looks at that a little bit, and just that that if we stopped eating animals, we would actually have more food for ourselves. So
there really isn't a global food shortage.
Nope.
It's that the food is going to the wrong places.
Absolutely. And we have enough food to feed everyone, but we're feeding farmed animals instead of humans. And often in countries where farmed animals are being raised for richer countries, and people are going hungry, they could be growing food for humans, but they're raising animals instead, right, and wasting that food. Yeah. So, and then of course, they're also heating the planet. Raising animals and growing food for them is heating the planet, and that will make it more difficult for us to grow food for ourselves in future. So, it all kind of interconnects. So more people die of hunger every year than live in Greater Toronto, Guelph, Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge. And about a third of those who die are children. So that's stuff for us to think through, where are our values in all of this? So.
And that's not spread equally amongst all areas of the world.
Absolutely.
That's concentrated in the poor areas.
Absolutely.
The sub-equatorial countries, the African countries.
Yeah. And in addition to, people think of, some meat as more efficient, things like chicken and eggs, et cetera. And in terms of, for some, in some ways they are, because they consume less food. But the excrement from chickens, whether they're being raised for meat or for eggs, produces a greenhouse gas called nitrous oxide. And nitrous oxide heats the planet nearly 300 times faster than CO2.
Wow.
And then if we think of cows, of course, we all know about cow burps and, all of that. So the methane from cows heats the planet 80 to 100 times faster than CO2, but it also dissipates more quickly. So if we got that under control, we could really make a huge difference.
So just reducing the amount of animal agriculture will
Absolutely.
reduce the amount of emissions.
Absolutely. Yep. And the United Nations says that the emissions from animal agriculture are equivalent to, some studies say, higher than the emissions from all transportation. So that's not all uses of fossil fuels, because we use it for other things besides transportation. But if we just look at transportation and animal ag, they're very similar amounts. So
Right.
we could really get things under control if we decided to do this. So, and I watched a minister online talking about food insecurity and our food system, and he said if you're eating animal products, it's like going into the fridge and taking a plate of food out and throwing it into the garbage, and and then going back into the fridge, taking out another plate and another plate and another plate, and just throwing them into the garbage, because that's what we're doing. We're wasting all of that food.
Right.
And so this next slide that you have up, this is from the Oxford Food Study, and it looks at land use. And the land use, the land that we're using, so we're using about 40% of the habitable land on the planet for agriculture. And it's probably higher than that now, because the Oxford Food Study was a few years ago. But 80% of that farmland, so 80% of that 40%, is used for grazing animals or growing crops to feed them. Any idea how much, what percentage of our calories come from animal ag?
I imagine that in North America it's more than globally, because we tend to overeat on animal.
Well, we do eat,
Yeah.
yes, we do eat too much animal products, but
Yeah. I don't know. I'm guessing probably in the order of 30% or so.
yeah, so it's actually less than 20% of our calories come from animal ag, but we're using 80% of our farmland for that. And in that study, it'll show you, the percentage that's farmland and the percentage that's forest. And of course, that was a few years ago, and we're eating through our forest really quickly. So probably a lot less is forest than it was then. So
It's a cascading effect, isn't it?
It
The
is.
farmland gets run over by asphalt and development,
yeah.
and then the forests get cut down to make more farmland.
Yeah, well, and we raise more animals because we have a higher population. We'll talk about that after. But and the other piece of it is people think that regenerative agriculture. So there was this guy a few years ago, Alan Savory, who thought he was going to save the world with regenerative agriculture, and he decided, he told everyone that this was going to be the solution, right? And so, there are studies that say that this is a good thing. Those studies, if you search far enough back, and I will give you some information to post on that later as well, Bob.
Yeah.
But if you search far enough back on those studies, you'll see that they were paid for by the industry. So this is a multi-trillion-dollar industry that has a lot of money to greenwash, right? Like the tobacco industry, there's disinformation campaigns. That's one of them. So with regenerative, it actually takes twice the amount of land to raise the animals, and they take longer to reach the same weight. So they they're actually producing more methane if we're talking about cows, right? So, they, right now, so in the United States, about 99% of farmed animals are in concentrated animal feed lot operations, CAFOs anyway.
Okay,
What we think
yes,
of
yes.
Factory farms, right?
Right.
Sorry, the word is just, the words are missing at the moment, but so about 99% of farmed animals in the United States are in factory farms. Probably over 90 across the world. Canada's probably got over 90% of the animals here are raised in factory farms.
Yeah.
If we took even a fraction of those animals and tried to raise them regeneratively and took twice the amount of land, and certainly we could not produce the amount of milk and eggs and meat that we do in that way within the boundaries of the planet that we currently have.
Right.
We couldn't possibly do that. So not a solution, although they do often talk about it as as what we need to do next. But and the next slide is also from the Oxford Food Study, and it just has a graph of again beef and mutton, et cetera. Those are pretty huge in terms of land use. So
It's showing that the beef, lamb, cheese, and the dairy beef
yep.
is out of proportion to all the other
Yep.
food sources for calories that are being produced for
Absolutely.
human consumption.
Yep. So this is land use per kilocalorie, 1,000 kilocalories. Yep.
Right. Yeah.
So, so these animals are consuming food, and we often don't think about the food that they're consuming, but often vegans get blamed for all the soy that's being used on the planet. But in fact, more than 75% of the soy that's raised on the planet is fed to farmed animals, and about 50% of the grain. So in fact, most of the food that we raise on the planet is fed to farmed animals, not to humans. So we absolutely do have enough to feed the people who are here and then some, but that's not what we're doing. So
Soy just falls into that general percentage as well. It's soy isn't an exception to this, is it?
no, soy, about 75% of the soy grown on the planet is fed to farmed animals.
Okay.
So, and then there's also, we'll get into fishing a bit later on, but also about 30 to 50% of the wild-caught fish are fed to farmed animals. So we feed animals to animals in order to feed human animals and our companion animals. So it's a bit wild. And these wild fish are also fed to chickens and pigs, et cetera. And then they're fed to farmed fish too. So they take wild fish, usually obviously the ones that people aren't interested in, and they feed them to farmed animals and farmed fish. So another thing that they do to save money is often using the leftovers from the slaughter industry. So they use basically just, they sweep up the floor in the slaughterhouse and use that the parts of the animals that no one else will eat. They feed them to other animals, and this is what led to mad cow disease.
Right.
It's believed. So
And scrapie in sheep, I believe, same idea.
Yes, I think
brain
so.
Disease.
Well, and the other thing is, so what they've been doing, this isn't legal in Canada or in some of the states, but in most of the states it is legal. So they take chicken excrement and the litter, the hay, et cetera, from where the chickens are, and they feed that to cows to save money, and also because there's so much manure, there's so much excrement being created in these places that it's hard to know.
And it
where
shows you some
to
of
go.
the waste of the nutrients that are being disposed of as excrement. If
Yes.
there's enough there to feed the cows, then
So they feed the cows, but that's how the cows got bird flu, is most likely, right? So that's how the bird flu got into the cows, right? So now we have that, another mammal with bird flu. So, but there are millions of tons of manure that is produced every year. It's got nowhere to go, you know. So a dairy cow produces about 62 kilos of manure in a day, and every day. And that's about the weight of the average human on the planet. So,
Okay.
and you
Not
know,
much in excrement.
lots of excrement, yeah. So then, of course, there is also the methane and nitrous oxide that are other waste products, and we've already talked about that. They're responsible for so much of the mess that we've created, heating the planet, et cetera. And I think I said methane dissipates in about 10 years. So if we got that under control, we could do that a lot more quickly than getting CO2 under control. CO2 lasts hundreds of years, right? But methane dissipates much more quickly. So if we focused on our food system, we could make a big difference.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk a bit about protein. That's our next slide. And that's just some general proteins. People honestly still can sometimes not name vegan proteins, right? Which is, I think, a failure of our education system, honestly. But obviously, there's beans and lentils and nuts and seeds, and there's protein in all kinds of things in sweet potatoes and in some vegetables, and we can just tofu is a big source of protein, and it's also taken a hit from the animal ag industry. There's tempeh, there's edamame beans, and there's tofu. Tofu comes in so many different forms as well. There's dried tofu, which is considered a whole food. They're called soy curls. Amazing texture. If they're very much like chicken or beef if you put them in a soup. But you learn to cook differently, but there's just so many substitutions, and I think people often have recipes that are, or cultural foods that are very dear to them, and there's so many ways that you can just make them with plant ingredients.
I was introduced to tempeh at KW Veg Fest, I think 2 years ago.
There you go.
And haven't been able to find it since. It's not in a grocery store.
I see it in the grocery stores usually, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to the wrong grocery store. Huh?
I've seen it in Sobeys recently.
Okay.
And in the health food store for sure. But
Okay.
Yeah.
Have to look a little harder.
yeah. And it's one that's a little bit harder, I think, for people to learn how to cook with. But soy is just so versatile, and there's 100 different recipes online. Or not 100. There's thousands and thousands of recipes online for a different soy, and there's also silken tofu that people use for desserts and things. So for making sour cream.
That's right.
Yeah, so just so many options out there now, right? And so many good cheeses and things that people can buy, vegan cheeses that you can get even in the grocery store. Some that's made in London and in Guelph, actually, too. Nuts for Cheese is made in London, and the Guelph one is, the Green Goddess.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and very good. The next slide is also around protein, and this is from the Oxford Food Study. And it just shows the emissions from different proteins, and of course the top, and led by beef, of course. All of the emissions, the worst of the emissions are all from animal products, and the plant proteins are down at the bottom.
And there's no overlap. I mean, there's a very distinct difference in this graph between the animal proteins, which looks like it's 80-90% of the emissions, compared to the grains and the tofus and ground nuts and whatnot, all at the bottom of the list. And there's absolutely no overlap. There's not a single animal-based protein that has less emissions than a plant-based protein.
And sometimes if you're looking at the other graphs that have different foods in them, there's some that are more, et cetera, something like chocolate, et cetera. But if you're just looking at protein, it's straight up plant proteins are the best thing for the planet. So, and really the difference between what I eat and what someone who eats meat, and animal products is protein, right? Because I can eat all of the other things that they eat, But the next slide, I think, if we're on the same page, is also from the Oxford Food Study. If we look at, it looks at the entire life cycle, basically, of different foods. And of course, beef is at the top, is the worst. And I like to show this to people because they often think that eating local is the first line of defense on climate and environment, and it's not. If you look at the little tiny red line, that's about, 1/100th of the line on beef.
That's the line that represents transportation.
That's the line that represents the greenhouse gas emissions from transportation. So it's about 1/100th, would you say? I don't know.
Almost everywhere on every item on this
Yep.
chart, beef, lamb, mutton,
Yep.
cheese, that line is pretty much insignificant. You can't see it.
Nope. So really what you need to pay attention to is what's on your plate, not where it came
Right.
from, right?
There's-
Obviously, we need to eat local food.
Yeah.
That's a good thing, but not local meat and animal products.
Yeah,
Right?
there was some study that I saw about 10 years ago that conflated the transportation emissions of different kinds of foods. And it was also counted separately under transportation, so completely misrepresented how
Yeah.
the food was responsible for emissions, because they were counting it twice in the transportation
Yep.
category.
Yeah. And actually, if you look at the bottom of that chart as well, those of you who are looking
Little
at
tiny
it online,
numbers.
the little tiny, at the very bottom, it's our nuts, and they're actually a negative in terms of emissions.
Okay.
They're high in water, but not higher than animal products, but they are higher in water than other proteins, plant proteins. But they are the trees are sinking carbon for us, so that's why they're a negative.
So eating nuts actually reduces the emissions. You don't generate emissions by eating nuts. The nuts are absorbing the
That's right. The
carbon
trees,
dioxide. And
the trees are so. Yeah.
that's interesting. I would think that is partly true for most of the plant-based foods, where the plant-based foods
Yeah.
are absorbing the carbon dioxide to grow.
Yeah, and if they cycle them through well, then the farms are doing really good things. Pulses, especially lentils, etc.
Pulses are
Yeah.
beans, lentils, peas.
Yes, and Canada actually is, I think, the second largest grower of pulses,
Yes.
etc., and soy. So we have lots of local protein.
Yeah.
We don't need to eat animal proteins that are so destructive. But
Yeah, I think Canada is probably the largest exporter of pulses worldwide.
yes, and the second largest grower of them, I think,
Yeah.
maybe after Russia. I could be lying.
Gifted a bag of Turkish lentils by someone, which I thought were great. But in retrospect, I realized they were probably Canadian lentils that had been exported to Turkey, packaged there, and then given to me as a gift.
Perfect. So the next slide talks about milk. And I will call it milk because even though there's lots of hullabaloo in the over the pond about whether we can call things burgers and milk, etc., if they don't have animal products in them. But I'm not going to worry about that. But this is a comparison again from the Oxford study of different milks and their emissions, the land use, and water. And as you can see, if you're looking at the graph, dairy loses on all counts.
Yeah.
And the industry, which, as I said, has deep pockets that they use to spread disinformation campaigns, often picks on almond milk. Almond milk has some of the lowest emissions and land use. It does have higher water use than other plant milks, but but it's lower in those other two things, and it's also a little over half of the water from dairy. So again, animal products lose.
Right. And so in this list here, there's dairy milk, rice milk, soy milk, oat milk, and almond milk in
Yes.
that order for
Yes.
the amount of emissions.
Yeah.
Any idea how that translates into sales in grocery stores? Because I see a lot of almond milk and soy milk.
I think almond and soy are more popular. I think that may be different in different places, but
Okay.
here I think generally almond and soy are the most popular. And I attended a plant-based nutrition conference in Toronto in the spring, last spring. I think they do it every year, and it's a fabulous conference with doctors and nutritionists and researchers, et cetera. And one of the things that I heard a couple of them say that is, in terms of children, fortified soy is the best plant milk to use because, and it's better than animal milk because, but it's the best one because it has the fat content the kids need. It's my favorite, but
I prefer oat milk myself, but
there you go. There you go. And and people actually make their own oat milk as well. So that's the thing. They make their own cheeses and things. So there's all kinds of recipes, millions of them. We do have a slide at the end, if it made it to your deck, I'm not sure, that has some recipe sites and such. But there are just a million choices out there. Anytime, and even I do this too, if I'm thinking, I feel like making something with, these three foods. I've got tofu, I've got, kale, and I've got rice. I look to see what, how can I make this interesting, But also if people have recipes that they like, they can, just go online to find out how to modify them.
Right. And because it's vegetables, most everything you can eat raw. In some cases,
Yes.
the beans, the dried beans may be an exception. So I wouldn't want
Yes.
to eat a dry soybean.
No.
But
No. But tofu, actually, when you just take it from the package, I think it's considered raw at that point, and you can eat it in that way. It's not considered processed in the same way as other things. And there are people who are, who eat raw vegan. It's not anything I've tried, so I can't really speak to it. But.
I'm just saying that if you're worried about cooking things correctly, if it's slightly undercooked, you're not going to be at
you're not going to
hazard
hurt
of the
yourself.
same
No.
way that you would in cooking meats.
And another benefit is you can keep things, sorry, a little too close. Another benefit is you can keep things in the fridge so much longer too, right?
Yeah.
So our next slide is maybe where I'm at. Let me just see. So we were talking about water. And our next slide, this is from the United Nations Environment Program, and it's just a picture of a hamburger, and it has the water use for each piece of it.
Okay.
And the burger itself, just the patty, it requires 2,500 liters of water, according to the United Nations and other studies that I've seen. So if that was gallons, it would be 660 gallons.
For one patty on one burger.
Exactly. And that's probably more than most of us would use if we were showering every day for like 10 minutes, right?
Yes.
And then if you add a slice of cheese to that, it's another 150 liters of water. And if you add 2 slices of bacon, it's more than 400 liters of water. In addition to the 2,500 for the patty.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the bread, et cetera. And if people can't think about, if you're not a cook or whatever and you don't know what a liter looks like, think of a bag of milk, the old bags of milk that we used to have. I don't even know if they still have those because I don't buy milk.
Yeah.
So that's how much just for a burger that we are wasting. So, and right here in Waterloo region, we are experiencing a water crisis, right?
A water shortage.
Water shortage. There was an article in the Record a few days ago about water bankruptcy And that's really where we're at. And, you know, people declare bankruptcy. I don't know if we can declare bankruptcy on our water shortage, you
I
know?
think at the moment we still have enough water for the current population, but the population is expected to go up to 1 million, you know, in 15 years or so.
Yeah.
And there will not be enough water in the current water table
Yeah.
to accommodate that.
Yep. And we're wasting all of this water that we don't need to be wasting, right? You know, I think a vegan patty is a couple of 100 liters of water, right? So we don't need to do this, right? And if you, I don't know if you've ever tried a Beyond Meat burger or whatever, if you want something that tastes exactly like meat, you can get that. You
Yeah.
don't need to, you know, there are lots of different kinds of veggie patties that you can make yourself, et cetera. But if you want something that tastes like meat, it's there, you know?
Sadly, a Canadian producer called Eve has just stopped producing their
Yes.
veggie patties, which were wonderful.
We're
We have
very
a
sad.
couple left in the freezer.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're left over for a special occasion.
Yep, yep. And there are some others that are coming up, but yeah, those were very popular for sure. The other water issue to consider is ocean dead zones. Animal agriculture is a leading cause of ocean dead zones. And that's, you know, something else that we need to think about. And dead zones, some of them as large as Prince Edward Island, if I'm not mistaken. And they're just these massive zones where there's no oxygen, nothing can live, right? No one can live, no animals, no.
And is that due to fertilizer runoff? That's,
Yes, it's runoff from the farms. Yeah, and I mean there are other causes of it, but they've traced.
Yeah.
They know that close to where there's runoff from farms, that's where they get more dead zones.
It
right?
isn't direct either, because what the fertilizer is apparently doing is it's feeding the algae that are in the water,
There you
which
go.
would normally be good to have, but they're consuming all the oxygen,
Yep.
which is depriving the rest of the bio system there of being able to survive.
I will. I was going to give you a breakdown of the Beyond Burger, but I won't because we need to move on. But the biodiversity loss is massive as well. So this is several years old, and I have two more that are more recent. So this was about 2015. And it just looks at the biomass of all the animals on Earth. They've done this with all different with insects, et cetera. But if we compare this, so most of these studies have said between more than 60% of the biomass of mammals is livestock now, 32 to 34% human, and somewhere around 4% is wild animals. And then
So that's wild animals, you know, all the big animals like
everyone, elephants, giraffes, mice, skunks, raccoons.
whales, dolphins.
Yes, I think in this one, actually this one is land mammals. The next one, if you look at the next one, it sort of breaks it down. It's got a picture of all of the different
I see.
animals
Yes, yes.
involved.
This,
And that's
this is a very interesting chart here. It's
Yeah.
divided up into 100 squares, so nice percentage graph
Yep.
there. And 36% of all the biomass on Earth, including sea animals, 30% is still humans. Sheep is 4%. I mean, 4% of all the
Yep.
biomass on Earth
Yep.
is sheep. Who'd have
Yep.
thought it? But the scary one is
cows.
cows, livestock, and pets.
Yep. Well, and most
60%.
Yeah, so the dogs are just 2%. And on the older ones, they didn't show up at all because cats and dogs were less than 1%. But as our population increases, people get more dogs. They're large animals. And I will also say they eat a lot of meat. But then what we have left is 5%. 2% of that is wild mammals on land, and 3% is wild mammals in the oceans. So
Wow.
we're killing ourselves here. And
Killing the rest
and
of everything else. Too.
everyone else
Yes.
too. And the next slide just has the biomass of mammals over time. So in at the beginning, it shows that 99.9%, of course, were wild.
10,000 years ago.
Yes.
The start of civilization.
Yeah, and 0.1% was us, And then there were no farmed animals. And then 100 years ago, 17% wild animals, 23% human animals, and 60% farmed animals.
And that's within living memory of people.
Yep. And now we have 4%. Again, this is a couple of years ago, so it's probably lower now for land mammals. 34% humans and 62% farmed animals.
Okay, so the percentage of farmed animals hasn't gone up a lot over the
No.
last 100 years. The number of humans has gone up, pretty much
Oh.
half again, from 23 to
Yeah.
34%.
Yeah.
And the reduction in wild animals is just crazy, 17 down to 4.
So the percentage of farmed animals hasn't gone up, but the number of actual animals has.
Right.
With our population, they are growing and growing, and they continue to grow. And then the next slide just also includes birds. So about 70% of the birds on the planet are farmed, and about 30% are wild.
Wow, yeah, I've noticed a decrease in the amount of wild birds in our backyard, for example, just over
Yeah.
the last 10, 15 years,
Yep.
which is due to other reasons. I don't think anybody's eating them, but
Nope.
still, it's an indication of how poorly we're managing our wild resources.
Our planet, yes. And, our cities, all of them want to keep expanding into wild places we can't afford to lose, right?
Right.
But anyway, that's a story for another day. The next slide actually looks at our population over time. So right now we're at about 8 billion. So this is from the United Nations. And you can see how that line is just, just like blew up there at about the year, probably, in the 1900s, 2000s. Our population, human population, just kept going up and up. And right now we're at about 8 billion. And we are expected to add another 2 billion by 2058, according to the United Nations.
So if those ratios from the previous slide hold up, we'll have ever so much more in the way of farmed animals,
Yeah.
outpacing us 2 to 1, with a corresponding reduction in
Yeah.
wild animal biomass.
We just can't afford it.
No,
You know?
the planet can't sustain
And
that.
if we stopped eating farmed animals, we could rewild about more than 70% of the farmland that we currently use and still feed everybody, right?
Yeah.
I think your next slide is the number of animals killed. So that's just in a day. So that's one day.
Looking at 900,000 cows, 1.4 million goats, 1.7 million sheep, 3.8 million pigs, 12 million ducks, 202 million chickens, and an unknown number, hundreds of millions of individual fish being killed
Yeah.
on a daily basis for human consumption.
Yep. It's massive. And the next slide just talks about bycatch. So when we're catching all of those fish, millions of tons of fish every year, we are also killing all these other animals. So millions every year, millions of sea turtles, sharks, small dolphins, seals. We're just destroying everything in our path, and of course they're killing off the coral as well,
Yes.
and destroying everything on the seabed, right?
Yeah,
So,
especially with the trawler nets that are just destroying the sea bottom.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now I know we're close to the end. Your clock has gone off, but
Okay.
I can't see it. But I think we're
We have
close.
about 10 minutes to the end of the show.
Oh, we should be good. So the next one is this is from the Intech Center for Climate Adaptation at the University of Waterloo. And it just looks at the number of hot days, extremely hot days, like over 30 degrees Celsius, that we have had, that we are getting, and that we can expect. And this is across Canada, the hottest cities. Guess where most of them are?
All in southern Ontario.
You betcha. And of course, Windsor, where I'm from, is the absolute worst because it's already the hottest part of hottest place in Canada, I think, on average. But also the humidity is pretty wild, so I can't imagine it getting hotter. And I mean, we know that there are places in the world where people simply can't go outside in the summer
Right.
because it's intolerable. It's not. You can't sustain life at some of those, And when we have heat waves, people die, right?
Yeah.
So
So not just bad for people, but all those animals that are being penned up are going to suffer from the heat as well.
Yes.
And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a huge loss in animal life because of the heat.
Yep. The CFIA used to say that the Canadian pages used to say that I think they might still, but a lot of stats have been taken down that don't sort of promote the industry. But more than 1 million animals die on their way to slaughter every year, and pigs in particular. We have a pig slaughterhouse here outside of Kitchener where they kill, I believe, about 5,000 pigs a day. They've ramped that up quite a bit. Anyway, I can't remember the current numbers, but often, and they bring those pigs in open trucks. No air conditioning, no heat. Winter and summer, if you can imagine being in an open truck for hours and hours. So often they will freeze to death in the trucks, and the pigs, they don't sweat, right? So you will see them foaming at the mouth from the heat because they are just so hot.
Right.
Yeah. The next two slides look at zoonotic diseases, which is the thing that we have to think about, and we need to think about it a lot right now. So the United Nations, the World Health Organization, et cetera, say that 75% of new and emerging diseases that humans are getting are from other animals. Sometimes they're from wild animals, but then we incubate them, basically. We have these petri dishes we call factory farms, and they get worse and worse. So the next slide just breaks that down a little bit. So it's from the increase in livestock production. It's also from from deforestation, and as we know, livestock causes, raising more animals causes more deforestation. It's from climate change. We know that raising more animals increases our climate breakdown. And then also, of course, I cannot say that word. Say it for me, Bob. I can never say that word. Antimicrobial resistance. It's just a word I cannot say. But basically,
You did fine.
Antibiotic resistance is increasing because of all the antibiotics that we're giving to animals, right? In factory farming, they're being raised in filthy conditions because they're so overcrowded. There's the air isn't fresh, et cetera, right?
So the bacteria are becoming resistant to all the antibiotics.
Yes, and so when humans eat those animals, they're consuming antibiotics, right, secondhand. So,
which means that only the strong bacteria survive, making diseases worse.
Yes, exactly. So, and then the next slide, people will have to. I know we're running low on time, but the next slide is from Dr. Andrew Knight. So he looks at vegan cats and dogs, and there are other researchers who look at vegan cats and dogs. There's Dr. Sarah Dodd was doing research at the Ontario Vet College at the University of Guelph, and Dr. Andrew Knight is out of Griffith University and Winchester University in the UK, and he has looked at. They've both done studies that suggest that cats and dogs can eat plant-based diets now. What's different with? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. My headphones are going weird. What's different with cats now is that we have a synthesized taurine that we didn't used to have.
Right.
So my cats have been plant-based for more than 8 years, and they're great. And the next slide is my cats, but you don't have to look at that right now.
Always like to look at pictures
There
of
you
cats.
go. See?
Lovely, healthy-looking cats.
They are beautiful.
Very happy.
Yeah. And their coats are gorgeous, too. And I mean, they've had health issues. They're, 8 and 8.5 No, actually 8.5 and 9 years old now. But, not more than other cats that I've had. So, but Dr. Knight, on the previous slide, he looks at the climate implications, right? So even though dogs are now only about 2% of the biomass of mammals, they're large animals. They eat almost straight meat when they're being fed meat, often. And so if just the dogs on the planet went plant-based, we would save more emissions than the entire United Kingdom emits. And that's
Just for the dogs.
just the dogs, yes. And so he's done a little breakdown there of, the water we could save for, like 7% of the, so we could save as much water as as Denmark uses if dogs went plant-based. As much water as Jordan, the country of Jordan, uses if cats went plant-based. And, he breaks it down for land use and that kind of thing. So there's lots of information there. He's got lots of studies online, et cetera. So just to do, I like to just talk about two, and I don't know if you got the final slide. You did, amazing. So just ways that people help to go plant-based. So there are free online mentoring programs. There's Challenge 22 and there's Veganuary.
Okay. Almost over.
Yes.
January's almost over.
It's a year-round program,
Oh, okay.
actually. It's because they named it that because people often go, have
Make their New Year's resolutions.
make their New Year's
and
resolutions
so-
for January,
Right.
yeah. And then there's some nutritional information sites. The Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine has all kinds of podcasts and things online. Dr. Pamela R.D., she is a registered dietitian. She also has a PhD in nutrition. Nutritionfacts.org with Dr. Michael Greger. EarthSafe Canada has lots of information and resources online. And then there's just a whole bunch of recipes for athletes and, for cheap vegan recipes and all kinds of things like that. So many, many options out there. Oh, and also in terms of the cats, I talked about Sarah Dodd. Sarah Dodd is a practicing veterinarian. She was working, she's living up north now, but she was working at the Ontario Vet College at the University of Guelph. She also has a PhD in veterinary nutrition. So, talking about vegan cats is off the wall as far as a lot of people are concerned. But, the studies have been done, and they suggest that it is that it can be done. And I've lived it, so I know
Right.
it can be done.
Your cats are the proof.
My cats are the proof. But anyway, so many things that we can do for our planet, and I appreciate you having me here today.
You're very welcome. Listening to CKMS Community Connections, Noel Markham from the Waterloo Region Climate Initiative, doing a presentation on animal agriculture. Thank you again for coming in. You're welcome back anytime. CKMS
Thank you.
Community Connections is a production of Radio Waterloo, produced at Radio Waterloo. Executive producer is Jennifer Strong. CKMS Community Connections airs every Monday and Friday at 3 p.m., alternate Fridays at 3 p.m. I'll be back then.